Barcelona met someone.
Hartelijk welkom op Citrix Synergy 2011 in Barcelona. Naast me zit Tal Klein.
Hallo.
That's easy, eh? Hello, hello, hi. That's almost a uniform message, but thanks for joining.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you here and finally in person meeting.
Yeah.
Normally we have Twitter conversation kind of thing.
Yeah, it's funny. Many people know me as Virtual Tal, and in fact, today, Gordon Payne just started referring to me as Virtual Tal. No longer uses my name anymore. So I guess
that's almost dangerous.
Yeah. I live dangerously.
So, when you look at the keynote from Mark Temple gave keynote, gave me a lot of energy.
Good.
That's I think that's important. When you just summarize the keynote from your perspective, so what does the keynote brings?
Yeah. So from the desktop virtualization perspective, which is kind of my area of specialty, and I think that the biggest announcement today was the AppDNA acquisition, and the reason for that is because onboarding applications into virtual desktop environments is a big headache, as you know. And a lot of our customers we have tools like the App Profiler, to help people get along with it. But ultimately, there's a lot of trial and error to bring an application into a virtual environment. What you want to do is get maximum density and also ideal end user experience, and that usually requires a lot of trial and error. What you hope is that you install the application and Zen app, and you're able to host it, and everybody's happy. But sometimes you need to stream it, with AppV.
And to help to determine that's what AppDNA can.
Yes, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
The tool is called Aptitude.
Yeah.
We also announced a partnership with Lakeside Software. It's part of our Success Accelerator, and that's a tool to help people start the VDI or desktop virtualization initiative. A lot of times people see what we have to say about desktop virtualization and they get very excited. And they say, yes, I want to do this. Where do I start? Yeah. And then our answer is, well, if you really want to be strategic about it, then you've got to do a POC, and we've got to get our consulting people in there and really understand all of your workloads and your users, and it's going to cost you money. So people say, well, before I do that, is there anything that I can do to get a better understanding of what it would take to shift my current IT environment from legacy, which is whatever it is now,
non-virtualized,
non-virtualized, to virtualized, and assign costs and dollars.
So in essence, an assessment tool.
Yes, it's exactly what it is. It helps you start up, accelerates your startup into desktop virtualization. Okay. So that's very exciting. And I don't know, do we announce that's the extent of
share files?
Share file acquisition. Well, I guess kind of in the desktop space.
That's correct. Is it server space?
Yeah, and I think that it's going to be both, right? So ShareFile is going to continue to exist as its own entity, and it's a really nice. People usually ask me my perspective on ShareFile, whether it's a box or
cloud-based solution or
and I think the best way to think about ShareFile is. You could say yes, it'll be the enterprise Dropbox. I'm not sure that I don't know how many enterprises are
iCloud for business.
Right.
That's cool.
Right, but I also think that a lot of the use cases for things like SharePoint today, or those things are actually going to be immediately useful, regardless of whether people use Dropbox or some other service today. That's somewhere you can just plug ShareFile in today, and it just works amazingly because you don't have to worry about formatting a web page and all that kind of stuff. You stick the file there, you get a link, and you can send that to whoever you want. So I think it's really the instant benefits to desktop virtualizations in that regard is nice because now you've also got centralized cloud storage.
Yeah, cool. Oh, Citrix already acquired Ringcube a few months ago, so that was a real announcement. Yeah. But you see some movement in that direction, combined with as cheap as possible zero clients.
Yes.
Driving the VDI cost down. Plus, to be honest, I'm a little bit skeptical if it's really dropping, for instance, 25%. If the new VDI approach is 25% lower than the traditional well-managed PC approach, but time will tell.
I think it's less about that, and I think you have to have a starting figure, right? And you use role-based PC. As an example, I don't think that the intent is to say, our belief is that the best approach towards desktop virtualization is a hybrid approach, right? And you have to treat it that way. So I think that the idea is the price drop is something that you realize over time. and maybe that's what you need to, in order to do to justify the project to the CFO or the VP of Finance. But the intrinsic value to the organization, I don't think actually has a dollar value to it. I think it's something that is a philosophical shift and allows you to stay in business.
And a shift to start with these kind of with Green Cube,
right,
and the cooperation with Texas Instruments and NQB.
Right.
Cool. So we saw in various demos the HTML receiver.
Yes.
I played with the Google Chromebook with the HTML receiver.
Yeah.
Well, it was the first release, and that's what I see as well. And that's very nice way to explain it. In your role as competitive analyst to some degree and marketeer, you have an interesting role by the way.
Yeah.
What is your take on why is it important to have an HTML receiver? That's a question. And the second question is, what are the others, like an Install-free or a VMware with App Blaster from the same perspective? What are they offering, and what's your take on that?
So, I think that my thoughts on HTML5 is that I think it's a great way of getting application access anywhere, and by that I mean in the context of a kiosk, and I use the word kiosk in the context again in something that you don't own. So if I'm borrowing your computer and I need to access
log into Facebook,
something like just get it done, it's not something that I would want to do on a daily basis. Right, it's almost like an emergency, like something I need to do, check my email real quick, or get edit it up.
And at the end of the day, just lowering the requirements on the endpoint.
Right,
that's a complete thing.
Right, and I think that you're never going to get a situation where you'll have an equal experience with HTML5 as you would with a local client, because what you're doing with HTML5 is you're abstracting yet another layer away from the application. So on the local platform, let's say iPad, I've got access to the accelerometer, I've got access to swipes and all that kind of stuff. The second I put the application inside of the browser, I now need to rely on the browser to have the appropriate extensions to communicate with the underlying platform, to communicate with the application that's being hosted in the data center. So it's two layers of abstraction.
And that means for Citrix, but also for Install-free and for VMware. Right. Because they're using the same, or it seems to be the same technology.
Yeah, the idea is, I think that App Blast is creative, and I think it's got a lot of interesting ideas behind it, but it can't ever be a replacement for something like Receiver, because Receiver is actually meant to be a tool for you to interact with your applications on a day-to-day basis, where you actually need to work, like be interactive with the application, not just check something, not just make a quick edit, but actually.
And especially when the Receiver is installed on a platform where you manage your PCs.
Right.
Why should I use the HTML functionality when I just access to the receiver? Right,
and that's the question, really. So HTML5, I think, is more of a way, if I'm at the airport, if I'm borrowing somebody's computer.
Or bring your own scenario where you don't want to push stuff to it.
Yeah, or even then you've got a receiver on it. So the idea is we were.
So in essence, it's not that huge.
I think it's huge in the sense that it creates true ubiquity, in the sense that you can really get to it from anywhere.
A new possibility.
Right. Yeah. And I think HTML5 has a lot of promise, but I think in general, the problem with HTML5 is it's still, you've got 4 different platforms. You've got Gecko, WebKit, Presto, and Trident. And all of them have different extensions, and all of them have different, haven't really reached different realizations of HTML5.
Funny is that people think, well, HTML5 is the standard.
Right. It's not, and that's why the reason, like for example, you say why do we only have HTML5 receiver for Chrome? It's because Chrome has specific extensions that allow us to actually properly display, HDX over the browser. But if you try to run the same receiver over Safari, which is funny because they're both running WebKit, but Chrome has a different implementation of WebKit. So even within the four platforms, you've got 2 different browsers that have 2 different implementations of WebKit through the extensions, because everybody wants to have proprietary. Everybody wants to have a reason for you to use their specific browser, so they add little things to it. Like Opera has the time machine thing that speeds things up and talks to proxy. Well, how does that impact the application? How does that impact the things that I install?
Interesting.
So I think that HTML5 is good for ubiquitous access, but I think that it's very hard, unless you're willing to just dedicate to programming around a specific browser, in order to truly deliver a rich Windows application experience, you need to have a client.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks.
Thanks.
Talking to you. And
yeah.
Have a nice day.
It was a pleasure.